And good morning. It's Friday the 15th of January and we are live. It's Man Talk and myself based in Port Eyre and Jed Power. To my left, I've got Michael Josem on South Quay in Douglas. But further afield, we've got Derek Flint in Lancashire. So, Derek, just lead in, will you? Tell me, what's the vibe over there? You look at the headlines and it sounds like carnage.
You know what? We turned the news off this morning because it is relentless. You know how it was Brexit. There was just this wall of nothing else other than Brexit. It's exactly the same with coronavirus. We're in a relatively low hit area, and we're sort of getting sucked into where the rest of the problems are in terms of Burnley, Blackburn, and so on, in terms of the numbers. But there's no doubt about it. The health service is under intense pressure. It has run away with them. On the positive side of things, the vaccination programme does seem to have been really ratcheted up. My 78-year-old mother, she had a jab this week, so that was a very positive step. And the news this morning is that infection rates are starting to come down. But I've a pal of mine who's been a bit of a skeptic, but he's been certainly very much sort of gung-ho in terms of let's just get on with life and we've got to live with this. He has just been completely sideswiped by it. In fact, I was quite worried about him at one stage because I'd asked him, if he didn't make it, whether I could have his Aston Martin. I'd made no garaging arrangements or anything, and it was going downhill. So fortunately, and joking apart, he does look like he's on the mend, but it is worrying. We've sort of taken a little bit of a step back in terms of even how we've been sort of interacting and socialising. I mean, we've not got any further than B&Q really, and the B&Q over here is like the size of a space shuttle hangar, so social distancing isn't a huge problem. But we really have just sort of dialed down again, minimised contact as much as absolutely possible, because this new strain does seem more virulent. We don't want to catch it, and we're just in it for the long slog now, really. And hopefully, because of the vaccination strategy which they've taken, they're talking about getting all over 50s done by the end of March. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, but it is tough. It's tough on a lot of people. We're doing okay, but it does wear you down on some days, and we've only been here a couple of months, so we've been lucky. So
you're keeping clear of the bigger conurbations, which would be Preston and maybe Blackpool, which is closer.
Blackpool's closer. We've not been into the town centre. I mean, basically it's shut, and there was somebody who reported on it the other day, a bit like Julie McGuinness was in Ramsey this morning on Facebook. It's just like a ghost town. There is nobody about. I mean, God's sake, it was getting like that as a shopping destination even before this. So how on earth it is going to recover remains to be seen. The missus has been into Preston a couple of times, but she found that she went on the bus. They are immaculately clean. There's social distancing on them, good conformity with mask wearing. But apart from that, and obviously everything is shut now again because we're in tier 12 or whatever it is, she's not found it too bad. But there's no doubt about it. The big area where this virus is being spread is in the supermarkets. There was a big piece on the news earlier this week where people were talking about somebody had gone in and said, can you just move along a little bit? She said, I'm not buying anything. I'm just here to meet my mates. So it's been used as a big social scene. And I saw some figures a while back from, I think it was from the Office of National Statistics, which was saying when people had sort of written down where they reckon they'd caught it, 16% reckon they'd caught it in the supermarket. Whereas about 1% said they reckon they caught it when they've been out for a pint or a meal or whatever. It's something which really does need tightening up on. We've used online shopping absolutely wherever we can. We just go and get any commodities from the local corner shop, which is which is a mile and a half up the road. So it's great for a bit of local exercise anyway. But apart from that, we're just trying to steer clear from the supermarkets.
Well, that does have some relevance here on the island, and certainly the local Tesco's and ShopRite have been pretty slick on enforcing face masks, and I think that's been respected across the board. Michael, you must have been out and about in Douglas and noticed that.
Yeah, look, I think the people of Douglas are really mindful that they have to do the right thing. They've got to be careful, got to wear the masks, got to do all that sort of business to reduce the risk of spreading the virus.
And Michael, it's been a funny week on the Isle of Man. We've been sat watching the press conferences, and there's been quite a bit of consternation, I'd say. The figures were not tallying up. I'm lost at where we are with the data sometimes. Derek just mentioned that the over 50s are going to be vaccinated by the end of March, and I think we're showing the end of May. So what's your take on it, Michael?
Sure. Well, the first thing is let's be mindful, first of all, that we've only been doing this for 1 week. And I've got to say this week has been one of the longest years of my life. It is frustrating to be stuck here at home and so on. But yeah, you're right. There are apparently, or reportedly, according to the government, there are 38 identified cases. Of which 12 of them were identified from people who had just recently returned from travelling themselves, and therefore there's 26 people who are believed to have caught the virus on the island from other people. The other key figure there is that the vaccination figures. So a week ago, that is last Thursday, the Minister for Health, David Ashford, promised that they would do about 1,600 to 1,700 tests, vaccinations rather, this week. They have well and truly fallen short of their own targets this week and only delivered 1,100. So that's about a third short. And so I guess this is a very frustrating situation, because I think the situation here is that you have, essentially as a community, we are putting our children's education on hold. We are suffering heightened levels of domestic violence. We're suffering, significant destruction to jobs, to businesses, to livelihoods. We are suffering the mental health consequences. We are suffering the physical health consequences of all this. We are ruining romantic relationships. But we are doing all of these things to save the lives of the vulnerable. I wouldn't say we're doing it happily, but we're doing it willingly. And so then the other half of that deal has got to be, by God, by the good Lord above, you had better be doing everything you can to get the vaccine to save the lives of the people who are vulnerable, because we are suffering all those costs to save the lives of the vulnerable, the elderly, the people who have the pre-existing conditions, and we wear those costs. But then the other half of the deal has got to be, you've got to get the vaccine into people to save those lives, so that we do not have to keep suffering the harm to the education, the harm to the mental health, the harm to the domestic violence, the harm to the jobs, the harm to the economy, the harm to people's livelihoods. And so that's I guess where the situation is right now.
Well, you highlighted there that the vaccination programme is already behind, and the public won't stand for water slide attitude. They won't stand for Douglas Prom attitude.
They will, Jed.
Yes,
they will.
They won't. They won't.
Yes, they will. Jed, that is a very naive view, because certainly in the 23 years I was on the island, every time I went to the polling booth in every 5 years, I thought, great, a new dawn, a renaissance, moving forward, change for good, vote for some candidates that are going to be a bit of force and vision and not be confined to those considered thoroughly safe by conventional standards, as Churchill might say. We get the same thing every time. I mean, Douglas South by-election was a classic example of that, and that's no disrespect to Paul and Claire, but they are thoroughly safe individuals. There is no appetite within the Manx public as a whole for change, for challenge. It's only things like this podcast, Manx forums, that actually pester, nag and bite at the establishment in terms of its approach. Nothing happens. I mean, look at the double down entrenched attitude they took towards Rachel Glover, and the fact that they've got a state of the art facility on island to do the testing that they needed, the genome testing to see what strain was there, and this, that, and the other. No, bollocks to that. We're going to go to Liverpool just to give her one of those, and that's the whole attitude of it. So nothing is going to change, mate. I'm sorry, but it's even more apparent sort of sat over here across the water looking in.
Well, you were sat over there across the water, and so were, say, millions of other people who may have caught on look north, look northwest, and Dr. Rachel was featured and given some considerable airtime in that interview. I mean, how was that translated, do you think, Michael? Did you see it?
No, so I didn't see the thing on the BBC because I don't have a BBC licence. I'm a very well-behaved boy who does not have a TV licence and therefore does not have access to the BBC iPlayer. But what I did see in the last couple of days is in fact, even just yesterday, in the news we have Alf Cannon saying that the taxpayer cannot fully fund the income of all the people who are losing their jobs and losing their income during this lockdown. What I think the point that touches on the point that Derek was just making is that the people who are making decisions are not suffering a cent. I don't want to speak about any specific individual, but I think it is safe to say that the demographic of government leaders are not at risk of losing any of their income. They're not at risk of losing, of being the victims of domestic violence. They're not at risk of losing their educational opportunities. And so there's really a response to this pandemic, and those people who are suffering at the cold front, whether that be whether they be workers in the the retail shops, or whether it be the people who invested their business money in various endeavours, they're all losing. But let me give you the hot tip: the government officials are not.
You're absolutely right. And another a piece of sort of mildly anecdotal reporting from the last lockdown was that there were some people within government who were working bloody hard. They were doubled down and really having to put the time, hours in to change systems, processes, etc. But there was a significant amount who were sat on their arse at home doing nothing, drawing the Queen's shilling. And that has really stuck in the craw of a lot of the Manx public who are now struggling, who are now locked down again, who cannot open their businesses and are having to survive on £250 a week or whatever it is, some paltry amount.
Or less.
Mira,
for those people who are eligible for it, is £200 a week.
Exactly.
And a lot of people are not. I'm not eligible for Mira.
No, and you look at there was a thing on this morning about the incoming president to the United States is looking to give everybody $2,000 to help tide them over. Then you've got the Japanese government provided an income of £700 or the equivalent to see people through the hardship as well. So there's more that can be done. But I get the feeling that it's actually really sort of coming home to roost now that the Ireland government is skint and is really struggling, and that's why they're having to try and double down. It's really coming home to roost now exactly what the problems are.
Well, we're not exactly getting much reassurance about what money is in the kitty. I'd love to see that one day, just to someone to just share where the future projections are. I mean, Michael, you must sense that. You're a financial man.
The projections on finances. Let me give you the hot tip. The projections for Michael Josem finances not very good in the foreseeable future. People are talking about tax returns and so on this year. Let me give you the hot tip. It will not be a very big number that I'm submitting this year, but for the community more broadly, I think you're right. I think there's a wide divergence, and to see the the government ministers, the people who are imposing this lockdown, not paying a single penny out of their own pocket. It's really galling for him to say, well, no, it's you guys in the private sector, you've got to wear 100%, but we will wear 0. It's just not kosher.
Well, I'm hopeful that when the election comes about in September, it could be that all this could have been avoided. We're sort of well versed in the testing regime that was amended round about September, October. Has that contributed to where we are now? Is there a mismanagement with our own track and trace? I think this next week and the increase in infections or not, and whether we're going to be out of lockdown by the end of February, if it extends beyond that, then the financial pressures just get stronger and stronger. And it could be that by the time, month 9 comes along, September, we've got an election and the public may demand that changes are made. Because at the moment, I think we're just teetering on a seesaw of confidence, on the island. We're going to go one way or the other. Derek, you see it the other way. You think we're crushed. I'm telling by your expression on your face.
Sorry, mate, I missed that. You froze for a second there.
That you think perhaps we're crushed here. Our future, is looking a bit dark.
I worry about it. I love the Isle of Man with a passion. But what is always frustrating about me, it's always had lack of confidence and sort of myself over the edge just to move things forward. The last time it did that was the growth of the finance sector. We've had the heyday of that. It now needs a really visioned future, and I don't think that we have anybody who has got that ability to imagineer a new future for the island. The problem is that the great Manx public, to coin a phrase that Howard uses, it has a very short memory and probably the attention span of a goldfish in a lot of respects. If they get to June and everything is clear and lockdown is away and out of the way, July, August, September are the glory months. The sun's shining, out there, knocking on the door, kissing babies, they're all back in. It is that nuanced. That is how this works in terms of Manx elections. They only need that little bit of a window to get the jingoism going again and get back in and have another 5 years of glory on the gravy train. If things progress beyond that, and you went into September where everything is locked down. In fact, the other thing, of course, you could say, we can't hold elections at the moment, can we? Because too much risk, so we're going to grant ourselves at least another 6 months. So you've always got that risk as well. That's how things work. I mean, it's so much different with party politics over in the UK, because as things collapse in terms of policy and so on, and you've got that mass of numbers which can actually enforce change and bring in another party for them to build up and then cock it up, and the cycle continues. I think you're going to see very little change, even though some people are clearly on the bones of their arse on the island, and that is really, really worrying, because what I also see is that we never had and still don't have the efficiency of social care to be able to support those people in their hour of need. And there was always, in policing and mental health, a grid that people fell behind, and it was always not due to the fault of the practitioners, but because of the resources put into it. There was that social care grid which should have supported those who had vulnerability or needs or whatever. They either fell into one or two camps. They either fell into criminality or they fell into mental health issues. I can see that if that grid isn't closed and that social care doesn't get an awful lot better, welfare support and so on to see people through these times, you're going to end up with people going one way or the other, and that is a huge burden on the Manx state. So I hope that these conversations are going on behind, but when you look at what happened with the testing regime, which was picked up on earlier on, you've got a habit of if you like, butterflying from one bit to one nest to another, and faffing around and fiddling with stuff that doesn't need fiddling with. The 7-day testing regime may well have saved all this second lockdown nonsense. So get a policy, stick to it, unless there is massively clear evidence in terms that you need to take a change in tactics. Stick to the strategy. So let's hope that within a few weeks there is a clarity in terms of the eradication of the virus again. I think then there needs to be another window, maybe about 4 weeks before lockdown finishes, So you're still into the end of March probably by the time that everything picks up again, because I think they'll be running scared this time. They won't want this to happen again, and it's going to be a tough call as to when lockdown clears.
Well, you heard it first, the election, and I'm with you now, Derek. I'd never thought that the election will be postponed, because we've got the local elections on the Isle of Man due for April. And I think postponing those for a year, many breathed a sigh of relief, because it stopped some new people getting into politics. We saw that Douglas Council election where a couple of young guns got in, and they've started asking the question, maybe on a bigger scale that could happen when the general election comes. But Derek, I'm a little bit concerned about what you said there. It could be that this epidemic isn't sorted out, and it'll give perfect reason, perfect excuse to say, well, we'll bump the elections over till April 22. So I'm just going to ask you, Michael, you think about a Brazilian, okay? Sometimes it could be nice thoughts, it can be carnival, it can be beauty, it can be whatever. I'm seeing the headlines now. We've got this Brazilian variant of this disease. Is the COVID-19 outsmarting the scientists? Are you picking up on this? Because it's scary news.
Sure. So that's the nature of viruses, is that over time, it's the nature of life forms. Over time, the descendants mutate, they evolve, and so on. So that's, not so. I would be very wary of giving. Personifying the virus and pretending that it has intelligence or anything like that, but rather it's going to be a battle, and that's why it's important that we get the vaccines into people. And that's why it's so sad that 6 weeks after the vaccines were first approved for use here in the Isle of Man, the first UK vaccine was given more than a month ago. It was delayed coming to the Isle of Man because of shipping issues. Then it was delayed due to paperwork, which, let us be frank, the government wanted to be legally safe rather than be morally safe by saving lives. Then it was supposedly delayed because they wanted to do 5-day weeks, which it turns out that they do not even use 5-day weeks to deliver the vaccine. And so now here we are, 6 weeks after the vaccine was first approved as safe. And over that time, less than 2,300 people have been vaccinated here on the Isle of Man. And that is less than the number of people who have been vaccinated in Jersey this week. There are more people getting vaccinated in Jersey this week than there have been vaccinated the whole time in the Isle of Man. And so when there are threats like the Brazilian variant, or the Kent variant, or the South African variant, or who knows where variant, it's really why the most important thing is we get the vaccine into people to save lives and to save all the harms of lockdown. And I know that Derek was speaking just a minute ago about the threat of an extended lockdown. And I am very nervous about such things, because the harm of lockdown is not linear. And it's sort of like when you hold your breath. If you hold your breath for 15 seconds, you will not remember it in a couple of minutes' time. The cost of that is trivial. But if you hold your breath for 15 minutes, the harm is certainly not linear, and it'll kill you. And I think the same thing applies here with lockdowns. If you're locked down for a day or two, then if you've got to stay home for a day or two, you don't really notice it. Everyone's had sick days. It's unfortunate, but it's a trivial cost. But as you extend the lockdown, all the pressures on jobs, on domestic violence, on mental health, on education will increase, and it does not increase in a linear manner. It will get worse and worse the more and more time we spend in lockdown. And that's why it's really important to get the vaccine into people so we have light at the end of the tunnel.
I'm just going to go off-piste now on that one. And we've got this little bubble on the Isle of Man. I'd just like to see what the data is from the supermarkets and shops as to how much extra alcohol is being sold, how much extra tobacco. Is it gone up or has it gone down? And then, say, in 6 months' time, what are the outcomes going to be? Because, Michael, you hit the nail on the head there. It's not just about business. It's not just about finances. We're talking about people who are going off on a completely different course in their lives. I think we all feel it, don't we? Sometimes you're at a bit of a loss what to do, okay, and you can fill your time up. But we're lucky. I think we're the people we are, we're in a good position. But is that right across the board, right across the community? And what is going on? I mean, we had a £25,000 cocaine seizure in Port Erin. That was in the news, this week. And you're thinking, my God, regardless of how the stuff has got here, it could have got here by all kinds of means. Who knows? It could have been come across over on a jet ski. So who knows? But you're thinking, what is going on behind the scenes? For this amount of drugs to be in a small community like Port Erin, how many people are using this stuff? And it's worrying, really, to think about that.
Yeah, it's a bit of an outlier to hear of a big seizure of cocaine getting seized. Normally, we hear about the various, to put it bluntly, low end idiots having trivial amounts of cannabis getting arrested. So this is a bit of a change from what we normally hear in the local news. But yeah, I think that different people will be responding differently. I don't know whether to be proud or ashamed of the fact that I had any alcohol since this lockdown started. I've not had a drink of wine or beer or anything, and I don't know whether to be proud of not touching the stuff for a week, or to be ashamed that not touching it for a week is even the least bit remarkable. And so there's different people having very different effects. And I know that you Jed, are very fortunate to have a loving family that you live with. I and many others are living alone, and it's just lonely to put it simply. And so I think that if we're going to extend lockdown, then keeping it in the current conditions cannot surely be sustainable, because I'm lonely. And let me give you the hot tip: there are a lot more people who are a lot worse off than Michael Josem. And so in that sense, let us hope that this ends soon.
I feel quite sad hearing that, Derek.
Yeah, I mean,
you've touched my heartstring there. Oh dear!
No,
if you want to stop Mike being lonely, put your comment in the box. Here we go.
It's very, very true, and these are the as Michael has picked up on several times in this session. These are the unforeseen consequences, and if you've got...
Well, they're not unforeseen. Everyone sees them, because we saw them a year ago. But yeah,
maybe the unfortunate consequences. Maybe the unseen consequences is what I meant. And the long-term effect on this is yet to be seen. And I think there will be a lot of people who do completely revise their lifestyle choices, their entire approach to life. But there are others who will remain scarred by this for some time, especially if you've had the trauma of a loved one dying, and you couldn't spend the final hours with them. Or a friend of mine, she's lost her mother abroad. She can't get anywhere near her father. She can't go to the funeral. It's a shocking mess, So these are those long-term scars are going to run deep for an awful long time. I mean, it's going to take a decade to recover from this, without a doubt. Globally, it's going to take a long time. It's going to be like coming out of the Second World War in terms of rebuilding economies, people, and so on. And although the overall death toll is less. It really is a 21st century battle that none of us would have wanted to fight, and hopefully we can defeat it in short order now that we know what we're doing. But for the island, which I think has got to always be the focus of these little chats, it really is a time for a shakedown and a real look at what's going on, and really sort of take the opportunity for change. And there are backbenchers who are advocating that, but there really are voices in the wilderness. Until there's a real sort of sea change of attitude, voting patterns, and more confidence to stand up and say, no, hang on a minute, I want to question that a bit more, in a bit more depth. We're taking at face value a report from a civil servant or whatever. Where's the real depth behind that? I mean, we've seen in the paper this week some rather ugly allegations coming out about Lawrence Skelly and the former Minister John Shimon in terms of their approach to a planning application that has rumbled on, and the people that were behind that planning application are now facing serious charges with regard to fraud. So, there's all these sort of things where we really need to question the overall approach and what the island's vision and values for the 21st century are going to be, and then stick to them and make sure that they're evidence well researched, and stick to them and move forward, and perhaps just temper some of the ambition a little bit. It's a lovely place. It's got great tranquility. It's got great security. But some of the other ambitions, they're a little bit sort of up here. We're never going to catch up with Monaco or Dubai. Let's be realistic about where our aspirations lie.
Thank you, Derek. On that note, we're just coming to the end. We're on 30 minutes, so we'll just finish off. Michael, I know you like your food. What's been on the menu this last week? You must have been experimenting with anything.
So there was a sale at Tesco earlier in the week on lamb, a whole lot of half-price lamb. So I've been very, very, very slowly cooking a chunk of lamb, and then every day or two popped over to the bakery, picked up some bread, and just simply some lamb in bread. It's been breakfast the last few days. Also, because there was such a surge in food buying at the outbreak of the lockdown, and now there's been a little bit of a reduction now. There's some great bargains to be had at all the supermarkets, especially at the co-op as well, where I've got full disclosure, I've been doing some work, and so get in there, pick up some of the various things that are on sale now, and so it's a bit of a bargain that can help people through otherwise difficult times.
And Derek, you're having to cope with people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, Priti Patel, and Boris Johnson. And did you see the Matt Hancock disaster? Did you see that?
Oh, you know what? I detest that man. He's just a complete and utter failure. And the way that they faff their way through interviews, I mean, they're all of the school of Boris, aren't they? It's very few who actually stand on their feet and actually hold a cogent argument. They get tripped up every time. They've got that attention span of a goldfish. They don't remember what they've said last time or what they've voted on, and so on. It really is embarrassing. But hey, I've got a KFC 5 minutes from my house. I'm everything in the garden is is rosy at the moment in terms of food and stuff like that. Mrs. Dell's looked after me incredibly well. We're having paella tonight, which I'm looking forward to, and all sorts of little things have been rustled up, which have been a really pleasant surprise for lunch and dinner. So we're lucky that we've got each other, and Michael's lucky that he's got half a lamb in the freezer as well, which is one of my favourite dishes.
Oh, well, we'll look forward to next week's instalment. That was great to have a chat. We did 32 minutes, so I think it's time to sign off. And some of us have got to go to the dentist to have some root canal experience. So it could be the last time I ever see you boys.
You'll be a dribbling mess when you see us next.
I'm crying. Adios. Okay, guys.
See you boys.
Next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.